I never thought I'd be the guy checking bank statements at 3 in the morning, but there I was. Laptop glowing in the dark, scrolling through transactions that made my stomach twist into knots. Ugh. $40,000. Gone. Not stolen by some hacker halfway across the world. Not lost in some market crash or bad investment. Spent by my wife. On a man I didn't know existed. The number just sat there on the screen, mocking me in cold digital font. $40,000. We'd been married 6 years. Good years, I thought. The kind where you finish each other's sentences and know how the other takes their coffee without asking. We had a joint account because that's what couples do, right? Trust, partnership, building a life together. All that garbage they sell you at wedding seminars and in those couples therapy books Sarah used to read. Turns out trust is just another word for blindness when you're not paying attention. And I wasn't paying attention, not nearly enough. It started innocently enough, as these things always do. I was trying to figure out why our savings looked weird. Not alarmingly different, just off enough to make me squint at the numbers. We'd been planning to buy a house, putting away money for months, skipping vacations and nice dinners to build up that down payment. Sarah and I had this whole thing mapped out like a military operation. Down payment by spring, close by summer, move in by fall, maybe start thinking about kids by the following year. The American dream, neatly packaged and ready to unwrap. Except when I logged into our account that Tuesday night after Sarah went to bed early claiming a headache. The numbers didn't add up, not even close. I sat there in the glow of the laptop screen, rubbing my eyes like maybe I'd misread it. Like maybe I was tired and seeing things. But no. We should have had close to $70,000 saved. Instead, there was barely 32. I stared at that number for a solid minute, my brain refusing to process it. Where did $38,000 go? I thought it was a mistake at first. Banks screw up all the time, right? Glitches happen. Someone fat fingers a transfer, and suddenly your account looks like it belongs to someone else. So I started clicking through the transaction history. Ready to call customer service in the morning and sort it out. Maybe file a dispute, get our money back, no big deal. That's when I saw them, the charges, dozens of them, hundreds maybe. I started scrolling and they just kept coming, like a bad dream that wouldn't end. Restaurants I'd never been to. Hotels in cities we'd never visited together. Luxury purchases from stores I couldn't even pronounce. Boutique shopping sprees, spa treatments, weekend getaways, and they all had one thing in common, one signature detail that made my blood run cold. They were all made by Sarah, our joint debit card. The one we'd gotten together when we opened the account 5 years ago, standing in that sterile bank office holding hands like idiots in love. My hands started shaking. I zoomed in on one transaction, trying to make sense of it. $1,500 at some boutique hotel in Austin? The Archer Hotel, it said. I'd never heard of it. We'd never been to Austin, not together anyway. Sarah had mentioned wanting to visit once, something about live music and food trucks, but we'd never actually gone. I checked the date on the charge, March 12th, a Saturday. I remembered that weekend clearly, because Sarah had told me she was going to a work conference in Dallas. Some leadership retreat thing her company was doing. Mandatory attendance, she'd said, rolling her eyes about it over dinner the week before. She'd even complained about having to spend the weekend in boring conference rooms when she'd rather be home with me. I'd believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my wife. The person I trusted more than anyone in the world. The person who was supposed to trust me back. I kept scrolling, my heart pounding harder with each swipe. More hotels, more dinners. A charge at Tiffany's for $2,200. I felt sick. Jewelry. She'd bought jewelry. When was the last time I'd seen her wear anything new? I couldn't remember. More charges rolled past. High-end clothing boutiques? Sephora runs for $300 a pop. A spa day that cost $800. $800 to get your nails done and sit in a mud bath or whatever the hell people do at spas. Every single charge dated back to times when Sarah said she was doing something else. I'd even helped her pack sometimes, folding her clothes while she picked out outfits, and chatted about how excited she was. I was such an idiot. Such a complete and total idiot. The room felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were closing in on me. My chest got tight, and I had to remind myself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the way my therapist taught me years ago when I used to get panic attacks in college. But this wasn't a panic attack. This was worse. This was reality. Okay, I thought, trying to calm down, okay? Maybe there's an explanation. Maybe she's planning some huge surprise. Maybe all of this is for us and I'm just being paranoid. Maybe she's secretly planning to renew our vows or organizing some big party. And this is how she's funding it. But even as I tried to rationalize it, even as I grasped at those pathetic straws of hope, I knew, deep down, in that part of your gut that knows the truth before your brain catches up, before logic can twist it into something more comfortable, I knew. Sarah was having an affair, and she was spending our money, our future, our house fund on him. On some guy who got to enjoy fancy dinners and luxury hotel rooms and Tiffany jewelry while I sat at home, eating leftover pizza and watching Netflix alone. The betrayal hit me in waves. First the shock, then the anger, then this weird numb feeling like I was watching my life from outside my body. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Just sat there on the couch in the dark living room, laptop open, going through every single transaction like some deranged forensic accountant who'd lost his mind. I made a spreadsheet. I know how that sounds. I know it's pathetic. But I needed to see it laid out, needed to understand the scope of what she'd done. I categorized everything by type: hotels, restaurants, shopping, travel, gifts. I color coded them: red for hotels, blue for dining, green for shop. By the time the sun came up and light started filtering through the blinds, I had it all mapped out in brutal detail. $40,000, spent over the course of 8 months. An average of $5,000 a month. Some months more, some less, but it averaged out to 5 grand monthly. On someone who wasn't me, on a life I knew nothing about, on a version of my wife I didn't recognize. Sarah came downstairs around 7, already dressed for work in one of those sharp blazers she wore to client meetings. Hair perfect, makeup flawless. She looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine, polished and professional and completely unbothered. She smiled when she saw me sitting there. That easy, comfortable smile she always gave me in the mornings. "Morning, babe," she said, her voice light and cheerful as she breezed into the kitchen like it was any other day. "You're up early." She didn't even pause, didn't notice the laptop still open on the coffee table or the way I was staring at her like she was a stranger. I didn't respond, just watched her move through the kitchen, opening cabinets, pouring coffee into her favorite mug. The one I'd gotten her last Christmas with a stupid pun about spreadsheets because she worked in finance and thought Excel jokes were hilarious. She hummed some song I didn't recognize, something pop and upbeat, and glanced over at me while she stirred in creamer. "You okay?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. "You look tired. Rough night." "I'm fine," I said, my voice coming out flat and dead. "Just couldn't sleep." She shrugged like it was no big deal and took a sip of her coffee. "You should try melatonin or something. I've been taking it and it really helps. Anyway, I've got that meeting at 9 with the Henderson account, so I'm heading out early. I'll probably be late tonight. Client dinner." I nodded slowly. "Sure, client dinner." She walked over, leaned down, and kissed me on the cheek. Her perfume hit me, something new I didn't recognize. "When did she start wearing that?" "Love you," she said, grabbing her bag off the counter. "I'll text you later." And then she was gone. The door clicked shut behind her, and I heard her car start up in the driveway. I sat there, coffee going cold in my hand, thinking about how easy it was for her to lie. How practiced, how smooth, no hesitation, no guilt in her eyes. Just another day, another lie, another piece of our life she was chipping away without me noticing. I didn't confront her right away. I know. You were probably thinking I should have blown up right then and there. Should have stopped her at the door and demanded answers. Thrown the laptop in her face and made her look at what she'd done. Should have screamed, cried, thrown her stuff on the lawn like they do in movies. But I didn't. Because here's the thing about betrayal that nobody tells you. It doesn't hit you all at once like in the movies where everything explodes in one dramatic scene. It's slow. It creeps in, fills every corner of your brain like water seeping into a basement until you can't think straight, can't breathe right, can't figure out which way is up. And part of me, the stupid, desperate part that still loved her despite everything, still wanted to believe I was wrong. Wanted to believe there was some explanation that would make sense of it all. Some reason that would make the numbers add up to something other than infidelity. So I did what any desperate man would do when his world is falling apart. I hired a private investigator. His name was Frank, mid-50s, ex-cop from Chicago who'd moved out west when he retired and got bored of retirement. He looked exactly like you'd expect a private investigator to look. Weathered face, sharp eyes that missed nothing, dressed in jeans and a jacket that had seen better days. We met at a diner on the outskirts of town. One of those places with cracked vinyl booze and coffee that tasted like it had been sitting in the pot since the Reagan administration. I slid into the booth across from him and pushed a folder across the table. Bank statements, transaction histories, everything I'd printed out the night before. He flipped through it slowly, not saying a word, just nodding occasionally like he'd seen this exact scenario play out 1,000 times before, and it didn't even register as interesting anymore. When he finally looked up, he fixed me with those sharp eyes and said, "You want the truth, or you want me to tell you it's nothing, and take your money anyway?" "The truth," I said, my voice steady, even though my hands were shaking under the table. He closed the folder and pushed it back toward me. "Keep this, make copies. Lock the original somewhere safe. It'll cost you 3 grand. I'll have answers in a week, maybe less if she's sloppy." And between you and me, he tapped the folder. "They're always sloppy." I paid him on the spot. $3,000 in cash that I'd withdrawn from my personal account, the one Sarah didn't have access to. Sarah and some guy I'd never seen before, tall and good looking in that generic finance bro way. Perfect hair, expensive suit, probably drove a BMW or something equally douchey. There was a photo of them laughing outside a restaurant, her hand on his arm. Another of them holding hands in some park I didn't recognize. One of them kissing in front of a hotel, my hotel. The Kimpton, the same place we'd stayed for our 3rd anniversary. I felt my throat close up, felt like I couldn't breathe. There were receipts too. Frank had somehow gotten copies of credit card statements showing charges I recognized from our joint account. Flowers sent to Marcus's address. Dinner reservations under Sarah's name at places I'd never been. A weekend trip to Napa Valley in September. She told me she was visiting her mom that weekend. Said her mom was having a rough time and needed support. I'd encouraged her to go, told her to take as long as she needed. Meanwhile, she was drinking wine and touring vineyards with this guy. Frank leaned forward, his voice softer now. "Look, man, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've seen every version of this story you can imagine. And my advice for what it's worth is this. Get a lawyer, document everything. Make copies of all this, store it somewhere she can't access. And don't, under any circumstances, tell her you know until you've got your ducks in a row legally. The minute you confront her, she's going to start covering her tracks. Deleting messages, moving money, whatever she can do to protect herself. So you get ahead of it, you file first." I nodded, unable to speak, my throat too tight. Frank stood up, dropped a 20 on the table for his coffee, patted me on the shoulder like a coach delivering bad news to a player, and left. And I just sat there in that dingy diner, staring at photos of my wife with another man, wondering how my life had turned into this. Wondering when exactly everything had gone so wrong. Wondering if I'd ever feel normal again. That night, Sarah came home late, again. Said the client dinner ran long, and traffic was terrible, again. I was on the couch pretending to read a book, the same page I'd been staring at for 20 minutes without absorbing a single word. She dropped her bag by the door, kicked off her heels, and flopped down next to me with a dramatic sigh. "Exhausting day," she said. "How was yours?" "Fine," I said, not looking up from the book. Same old. She launched into some story about the dinner, about closing some big deal with a difficult client, animated and excited like she always got when she talked about work. And I watched her lie to my face with the skill of a seasoned con artist. Watched her weave this elaborate fiction without a single tell, without a hint of guilt in her eyes. When she finally went upstairs to shower, I pulled out my phone and searched for divorce lawyers. Found one with good reviews. Her name was Linda Chen, specializes in high conflict divorces, one review said. Doesn't mess around, exactly what I needed. We met the next day at her office downtown. A sleek modern space with glass walls and minimalist furniture that probably cost more than my car. I brought everything. The folder Frank gave me, the bank statements I'd printed, my own documentation of Sarah's lies. I laid it all out on Linda's desk like evidence at a crime scene. She went through it methodically, making notes on a legal pad, asking questions in that calm professional way lawyers have. "How long have you been married?" "6 years. Any kids?" "No, thank God. Any prenup?" "No." "Do you own property together?" "The house." "It's in both our names, but I paid most of the down payment." She nodded, wrote something down. When she finished reviewing everything, she looked at me with something that might have been pity or might have just been professional sympathy. "This is bad," she said bluntly, "but it's also good for you legally." "Good," I repeated, my voice hollow. "How is any of this good?" She tapped the bank statements with her pen. "You're in a community property state. which means normally everything gets split 50-50 in a divorce. But this, she gestured to the evidence spread across her desk. This is financial misconduct. She spent marital funds on an extramarital affair. That's not just morally wrong, it's legally actionable. We can argue she wasted marital assets and seek reimbursement. Plus the infidelity. While it doesn't affect the divorce itself in this state, it does affect things like alimony. She's not getting a dime from you. In fact, you're going to come out of this in a much better position than her. I felt something flicker in my chest. Not hope exactly, more like resolve. A sense that maybe I wasn't completely powerless here. Okay, I said, my voice stronger now. What do I do? What's the plan? Linda leaned back in her leather chair, fingers steepled like she was about to deliver a battle strategy. First, you separate your finances immediately. Today, if possible. Open a new bank account in your name, only at a different bank. Transfer exactly half of what's currently in the joint account. Not more than half, that's important. If you take more, she can claim you're hiding assets and that'll hurt you in court. But half is yours legally and you need to protect it. Second, you keep acting normal at home. I know that's hard. I know it feels impossible, but you cannot tip your hand yet. Let her think everything's fine while we build the case and prepare to file. The element of surprise is crucial here. Third, you document everything from this point forward. Every lie she tells you, every time she says she's somewhere and you know she's not, every late night, every suspicious phone call. Write it down with dates and times. We're going to bury her with evidence. And fourth, she looked at me seriously. You take care of yourself. This is going to be hard. Harder than you think. So lean on friends, family, whoever you have. Consider therapy. And don't make any big decisions beyond the divorce. No revenge affairs, no drunk texting her, no social media rants. You keep your head down and you let me handle the legal warfare. Can you do that? I nodded. Yeah, I can do that. I left her office feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Not happy. I wasn't anywhere close to happy. But I had a plan. I had a strategy. I wasn't just drowning anymore. I was swimming toward shore, and that made all the difference. That afternoon, I opened a new account at a credit union across town, walked in, filled out the paperwork, and transferred exactly half of what remained in our joint account. $15,842. It wasn't much, not compared to what we lost to Sarah's affair. But it was mine, safe, out of her reach, protected. Then I started documenting everything like Linda told me to. I bought a small notebook and kept it in my car. Every time Sarah said she was working late, I'd note the time she left and the time she came home. Every time she mentioned a business trip or a girls' night, I'd write it down and later check her story against the bank statements and the information Frank had given me. And every single time, the lies stacked up like bricks in a wall I was building between us. It was almost impressive in a sick way, how good she was at lying, how seamlessly she could switch between her two lives, how she could kiss me goodbye in the morning, spend the afternoon with Marcus, and come home that evening like nothing had happened. If I hadn't stumbled onto the bank statements, if I hadn't hired Frank, I genuinely believe I never would have known. She would have kept it going indefinitely, living this double life, and I would have been the fool funding it all with a smile on my face. But I did know. And now I couldn't unknow it. Couldn't unsee those photos. Couldn't forget the way she'd lied to my face over and over again. The hardest part wasn't the anger. Anger is easy. Anger is clean and simple. The hardest part was the grief. Grieving the marriage I thought I had. Grieving the person I thought she was. Every night I'd lie in bed next to her, listening to her breathe, and mourn the loss of something that apparently never existed in the first place. 3 weeks later, Linda called me at work. "We're ready," she said, her voice all business. "I'm filing the papers today. How do you want her served? At home or at work?" I thought about it for a minute, sitting in my car in the parking lot during lunch. Part of me wanted to be there when it happened. Wanted to hand her the papers myself and watch her face when she realized I knew everything. But that felt too theatrical, too much like something out of a soap opera. I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I just wanted out. "At work," I said finally. "Serve her at work." There was a pause on Linda's end. "You sure?" she asked. "That's going to be public. Pretty humiliating for her." "I know," I said. "And honestly, after spending $40,000 of our money on another man, I think she can handle a little public humiliation." "Fair enough," Linda said, and I could hear the slight smile in her voice. "I'll have the process server go to her office tomorrow afternoon." The next day, I called in sick to work. couldn't face sitting in meetings and pretending to care about quarterly reports when I knew what was happening across town. I stayed home, pacing the apartment I'd rented after moving out of our house 2 weeks prior, waiting for my phone to ring. It rang at 2:15. Unknown number. I answered. Is this regarding Sarah Hendricks? A professional voice asked. This is the process server. She's been served. I felt my heart rate spike. How did she react? There was a pause. She went pale, asked me if this was a joke. I told her it wasn't. She excused herself from the meeting she was in. Last I saw, she was crying in the hallway. The process server sounded uncomfortable, like he'd witnessed something he wished he hadn't. Anyway, she's been legally served. Have a good day. He hung up. I sat down on the couch, hands shaking, and waited. It didn't take long. 20 minutes later, my phone exploded with texts. 17 in a row, each one more frantic than the last. What is this? Why are you doing this? We need to talk. Please call me. This is insane. You can't just throw away 6 years. I love you, please. I deleted them without responding. Linda had been clear. No contact. Let the lawyers handle everything. But God, it was hard. Hard to ignore the woman I'd spent 6 years with, even knowing what she'd done. She came to my apartment that night. I don't know how she found out where I was staying. Maybe she'd followed me. Maybe she'd hired her own investigator. But at 8:30, there was pounding on my door, and her voice, shrill and desperate, calling my name. I opened the door because I didn't want her making a scene in the hallway. She pushed past me into the apartment. Mascara streaked down her face, still in her work clothes, clutching the divorce papers in one hand. What is this? She demanded, her voice breaking. What the hell is this? You know what it is, I said, quietly closing the door. It's divorce papers, Sarah. It's over. You can't just. She started, then stopped. Took a shaky breath. Tried to compose herself. We need to talk about this. Like adults, we need to figure this out. There's nothing to figure out, I said, keeping my voice level even though my heart was racing. I know about Marcus. I know about the $40,000. I know about every lie you've told me for the past 9 months. So no, Sarah, we don't need to talk. You need to get a lawyer and we'll handle this through them. She crumpled then, literally sank to her knees on my apartment floor, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. I didn't mean for it to happen, she gasped out between sobs. It just did. I didn't plan it. It was supposed to just be lunch, and then it wasn't, and I couldn't stop it. I looked down at her, this woman I'd loved for 6 years, and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a cold, empty space where those feelings used to be. You didn't mean to spend $40,000, I said flatly. You didn't mean to lie to me every single day for 9 months. You didn't mean to sleep with someone else and come home and kiss me goodnight like everything was fine. Which part was the accident, Sarah? Because from where I'm standing, you made a choice. Every single day, you made a choice. Every single day you made a choice. She looked up at me, mascara streaked face desperate and ugly with crying. I love you, she said. I made a mistake, but I love you. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can work through this. I'll end it with Marcus. I'll do whatever you want. Just please don't throw away our marriage. I stood up and walked to the door. Opened it. No, I said. We can't fix this. You made your choice, Sarah. Every time you lied, every time you spent our money on him, every time you kissed me goodnight and pretended everything was fine, you made a choice. And now I'm making mine. I'm done. She tried to grab my hand, but I pulled away. Please, she whispered, still on her knees. Please don't do this. I can't lose you. You already did, I said. You lost me the first time you lied. You just didn't realize it yet. Now please leave. She stared at me for a long moment, like she was seeing me for the first time, like she'd never considered I might actually have a breaking point. Then, slowly, she stood up, wiped her face with the back of her hand, and walked past me out the door. I watched her get in her car and drive away. Then I closed the door, locked it, and for the first time in months I felt like I could breathe. I grabbed my keys, my jacket, and drove to a hotel downtown. Checked in under a fake name, which probably wasn't necessary but felt important somehow. And that night, lying in a bed that wasn't mine in a room that smelled like industrial cleaning products, I slept like a baby, deep and dreamless and peaceful. The divorce took 4 months to finalize. 4 long months of lawyers and mediation sessions and Sarah trying every tactic in the book to win me back or at least minimize her losses. She sent texts constantly at first. Long rambling apologies, promises to change, desperate pleas for another chance. She showed up at my apartment 3 more times, each time more disheveled than the last. begging me to reconsider. She even had her mother call me, this woman who'd never liked me anyway, suddenly pleading Sarah's case and telling me how good marriages require forgiveness. I told her respectfully that if she wanted to forgive Sarah for something, she should try being the one married to her. That shut her up. Sarah tried everything. She suggested counseling. She offered to quit her job. She said she'd do anything, give up anything, if I'd just give her another chance. But I didn't budge. Couldn't. Because every time I even considered it, I'd remember those bank statements, those photos, the way she'd lied so easily for so long. And I knew deep in my bones that I could never trust her again. And what's a marriage without trust? Linda was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. During mediation, Sarah's lawyer tried to argue that she was entitled to half of everything we owned, including the house and the remaining savings. He painted her as a devoted wife who'd made one mistake and was being unfairly punished. Linda let him finish his whole speech, then calmly opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder 3 inches thick. She spent the next hour methodically destroying that narrative. She had bank statements going back 18 months, credit card records, Frank's investigation report with photos and timelines, receipts from hotels and restaurants. She even had text message records that Frank had somehow obtained showing Sarah and Marcus planning trips and talking about their relationship. By the time Linda was done, Sarah's lawyer looked like he'd been hit by a truck. He asked for a recess. 20 minutes later, he came back and recommended Sarah accept our terms. The terms were simple. I kept the house. Sarah had never contributed to the down payment anyway. That had been my inheritance from my grandfather. I kept our car. I kept what was left of our joint savings, which wasn't much after Sarah's spending spree. Sarah got her car, her personal belongings, and whatever debt she'd racked up on credit cards. No alimony, no splitting of my retirement account, nothing. She walked away with basically what she came into the marriage with, which seemed fair to me considering what she'd taken. The final hearing was brief. Sarah showed up looking like she'd aged 5 years in 4 months. Thinner, dark circles under her eyes. Hair not quite as perfect as it used to be. We sat on opposite sides of the courtroom and didn't look at each other. The judge reviewed the settlement agreement, asked us both if we understood and agreed to the terms, and when we both said yes, he signed the papers. Just like that, 6 years of marriage dissolved in less than 10 minutes. We are divorced, the judge said, and it was over. I walked out of that courthouse into the bright afternoon sunshine and felt nothing. Not relief, not sadness, just a strange, empty nothing. Like closing a book I'd been reading for years and realizing I didn't remember most of the plot. Sarah tried to talk to me in the parking lot, but I walked past her to my car and drove away. I never saw her again after that day. Never spoke to her. Cut all contact completely. Oh, and Marcus. Funny thing about Marcus. Turns out he didn't actually know Sarah was married. She told him she was divorced, wore her ring on her right hand when she was with him, and said it was from her grandmother. Spun this whole story about an amicable split and co-parenting arrangements that didn't exist because we didn't have kids. When Marcus found out the truth, when someone from Sarah's office who knew the whole messy story apparently felt compelled to fill him in, he dumped her immediately, blocked her number, blocked her on social media, wanted absolutely nothing to do with the mess she'd created or the chaos that was her life. So Sarah lost everything. Her marriage, her boyfriend, her financial security, the house. Most of her friends took my side once they heard the full story, which apparently Sarah tried to spin as me being controlling and jealous until Linda's evidence made that impossible. Sarah's own sister stopped talking to her. Her parents were humiliated. And Marcus, the guy she'd blown up her entire life for, wanted nothing to do with her once he realized she was a liar. Poetic justice. The universe balancing the scales, karma, whatever you want to call it. I ran into her exactly once after the divorce was finalized. Total accident. I was grabbing coffee at this place downtown that I used to avoid because it was near her office, but I'd stopped caring about running into her. It had been a year. I'd moved on. She was in line ahead of me, didn't see me at first. She looked different. Older, tired. Her clothes weren't as nice. Hair pulled back in a messy ponytail instead of the sleek style she used to wear. She was paying for a small coffee, counting out change from her wallet, and I realized she was struggling financially. That $40,000 must have run out. Or maybe Marcus had been funding her lifestyle, and when he left, she couldn't keep it up on her own. She turned around and almost walked right into me. Froze. "Hey," she said quietly. Just hey. Like we were acquaintances who'd lost touch. not two people who'd torn each other's lives apart. Hey, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. We stood there in this awkward silence. The barista called my name. I grabbed my coffee. She was still standing there. How are you? She asked, and her voice cracked slightly on the question. Good, I said. Really good, actually, and I meant it. I'd spent the past year rebuilding my life piece by piece. Got a new apartment in a neighborhood I actually liked. Got a promotion at work. Started going to the gym. Joined a hiking group and made new friends. Even went on a few dates. Nothing serious yet, but it felt good to know I could. I was happy. Actually, genuinely happy for the first time in years. She nodded, tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. That's good, she said quietly. I'm glad you're doing well. There was another pause. Then she said, I'm sorry for everything. I know it doesn't change anything, but I am. I really am. I looked at her, really looked at her, really looked at her, studied her face, trying to find some trace of the woman I'd loved. But she was gone. Or maybe she'd never been real to begin with. Maybe I'd just loved the version of her I'd created in my head. The version I wanted her to be, not who she actually was. I know, I said finally. And I hope you figure things out, Sarah. I really do. Then I walked past her, out into the street, and didn't look back. Didn't watch to see if she was crying. Didn't care. She was part of my past, and I'd left her there where she belonged. Here's what nobody tells you about betrayal. What they don't put in the movies or the self-help books or the therapy sessions. It doesn't just hurt in the moment, it changes you fundamentally, makes you question everything you thought you knew, every relationship, every promise, every I love you. For a long time after the divorce, I didn't think I'd ever trust anyone again. Couldn't imagine letting someone that close, giving someone that much power to destroy me. Every time I went on a date, there was this voice in the back of my head asking what they were hiding, what they were lying about when the other shoe would drop. It was exhausting. Made me want to just give up on the whole idea of relationships and live alone with my coffee and my hiking boots and my trust issues. But slowly, piece by piece, day by day, I started to heal. Started to believe that not everyone is Sarah. That some people actually mean it when they say forever. That some promises actually hold weight. I'm not completely there yet, still working on it. Still flinch sometimes when someone reaches for my phone or asks where I've been. But I'm getting better, and honestly, in a strange way, I'm grateful. Not for what Sarah did. I'll never be grateful for that. But for what it taught me about myself. That I'm stronger than I thought I was. That I can survive something I thought would kill me. That I deserve better than someone who sees me as an ATM in a cover story. That I'd rather be alone and at peace than partnered and anxious. Sarah thought she could have it all, the stable marriage, the exciting affair, the joint bank account to fund her double life. She thought she was smart enough to juggle it indefinitely, that I was oblivious enough to never catch on, that she could keep both worlds spinning without them ever colliding. But you can't build a life on lies. You can try. God knows she tried. But eventually, inevitably, it all comes crashing down. The weight of the deception becomes too much. The stories stop lining up. The receipts pile up. The truth has a way of surfacing no matter how deep you try to bury it. And when it does surface, when everything comes crashing down, you're left with nothing but wreckage and the crushing realization that you did this to yourself. Nobody forced Sarah to start an affair. Nobody made her spend $40,000 of our savings. Nobody held a gun to her head and made her lie every single day for 9 months. She chose it. All of it. And when the consequences came, when I filed for divorce and walked away, she had nobody to blame but herself. I didn't destroy Sarah. That's important to understand. I didn't ruin her life out of spite or revenge or some elaborate plan to make her suffer. I just stopped letting her destroy me. Stopped funding her lies. Stopped playing the role of the oblivious husband while she lived her best life on my dime. All I did was tell the truth, protect what was mine, and walk away from something toxic. The destruction that followed was her own doing. The loss of Marcus, the financial struggles, the damaged relationships with family and friends. That was all fallout from her choices, not mine. I just refused to go down with her ship. And that, honestly, that's the real revenge if you want to call it that. Not some grand public humiliation, not some elaborate scheme to ruin her. Just walking away, building a better life without her. Being genuinely happy while she deals with the consequences of her actions. Because at the end of the day, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's indifference. It's reaching a point where you genuinely don't care what they're doing, or who they're with, or whether they're happy or miserable. It's taking back your peace, your power, your future, and refusing to let them have any space in your head rent-free. Sarah spent $40,000 trying to live a double life, trying to have her cake and eat it too, trying to keep me as the safe, stable option while having excitement and passion with someone else. And I spent 4 months ending it. Cleanly, legally, permanently, and honestly, I'd make that trade every single time. Because what I got in exchange for those 4 months of legal hell was my freedom. My self-respect. My ability to look in the mirror and not hate the person looking back. My chance to build a life that's actually mine, not some shared delusion held together with lies and joint bank accounts. So yeah, she spent $40,000 on her secret boyfriend with our joint account. And I spent it buying back my life. Best money I never actually spent. The end.